I would like to introduce a man that needs no introduction, I believe, Matt Forshee, the President and CEO of the Fayette County Development Authority.
Good morning. Everybody's excited to be here, I can tell. Everybody's been fed, coffee. Everybody's alert and ready to go. I'm not normally a morning person, I have to admit, so I'm here. I am excited to be here. When we took the trip to Williamson, it was such an experience for us in Fayette County to see how another community operates. So many things we learned, and I'm very excited for what the Chamber is doing today to give you an opportunity, those of you who were on that trip and those of you who were unable to be on that trip, but to give you an opportunity to see how the outside may see our community, almost like revisiting ourselves in some level. Virginia has asked me to do a slight recap of our trip, just to refresh you on what we did, what we saw. We'll go through that really quickly. So here's our agenda for my 45 minutes. Williamson County recap. Where exactly are we today? How did we get here from an economic sense? And where are we going? And then if there's some time for Q&A, we'll hit that as well. So from a Williamson County recap on this chamber trip, Sunday, we had the networking drive. I like the networking drive. You got a chance to visit for a couple hours and network with your Fayette County partners here. We had a reception and dinner that night with the Brentwood Mayor and Chamber, get our first taste of Williamson County and Franklin. Monday morning, we started bright and early with economic development, one of the best topics to start with, if I do say so myself, with Matt Largent, who is my counterpart in Williamson County, and Rogers Anderson, the county mayor of Williamson County. Went into education with representatives from the local school board and their local college. Great discussions there. Had lunch at the Franklin Theater, had a tour of the Franklin Theater, saw historic preservation elements, how they've been able to reuse that facility and bring it back and really commit as a community to a historic landmark from a preservation standpoint. Discussed Main Street and tourism with a panel at lunch. Went on a planning tour on the bus, got to see some of the communities of Franklin, how they've redeveloped some areas, how they've maintained some development, done some infill development as well. Got to tour the factory, a really impressive adaptive reuse, an old manufacturing facility that was adapted to multi-tenant operations, almost like a creative class mall. That's the way it felt to me. You had a lot of unique stores and businesses and endeavors that were on in the factory. Had dinner that night. Tuesday, got up again bright and early, went to ComData, had a tour of ComData, got to visit with some of their folks who actually had some ties back to Fayette County, had a healthcare discussion with Williamson Medical, their local hospital, Vanderbilt Health, who provides a more regional focus, Safety Net Clinic, and some others who are doing some health-focused activities. Had a session on regional cooperation with the Nashville Metropolitan Planning Organization, how they collaborate regionally in the Nashville area. A little discussion on transit and some involvement from their elected officials and how they work across regions. Then we had a wrap session where we talked about what we had learned and then took the bus home, and I think half the group slept on the way back because you didn't have time during those 3 days. So there's a recap of where we were. I'm going to move into a discussion of Fayette County now, really on some levels paralleling what Matt Largent, my counterpart, talked to you about up there. Gave you some details of Williamson County, how they got to where they were, what their economy looked like. I'm going to give you the Fayette County perspective. Who are we? What do we look like? Where have we been? And where are we going from an economic development standpoint? From a population standpoint, we're going to start with the basics. Population, Fayette County. The numbers vary depending on who you're talking to. Census numbers, Atlanta Regional Commission, other entities that do population estimates. But roughly, we're somewhere between 107,000 and 111,000 people in Fayette County today. Average household income across the board of about 90,000. Cost of living, we're 4.6% below the national average. And the Development Authority this year entered into a new program with a national organization that does a cost of living study, essentially to over 350 communities around the country. They send a survey, and then a local organization actually goes out and prices everything from what's a new car cost to what does a T-bone steak cost at 3 different grocery stores, what's the cost of housing, goes through a huge list. We've now started into that program and just got the first numbers that Fayette County is 4.6% below the national average from a cost of living standpoint. So if 100 is the national average, we're 96.4. Other communities like Manhattan, are 212% above the national average. There are areas in Mississippi that are 70% below, or 70% of the national average. So we're just a little bit below, but it has to do a lot with our quality of life. And we're going to be releasing some detailed information on this in the next couple of days. A labor force in Fayette County, we've got about 53,000 people actively working that live in Fayette County. But if you look at a 30-minute drive time, 30 to 45-minute drive time, we have a labor force that we can pull from of 835,000 people today. That's a huge opportunity for us. Again, you're going to see a lot of data here. Don't get too fixated on the details here. But just to give you a population breakdown, these are our census numbers comparing 2000 census to the 2010 census, broken down by major communities within the county. You've got the cities, the unincorporated area. What you're looking at as a difference here, you look at the growth rate on the top right here. Unincorporated county from 2000 to 2010 grew at about 9.8% population between those two census points. Peachtree City grew at 8%. Fayetteville grew at 30%. A population increase of 43% in Tyrone. Brooks and Woolsey saw a slight loss in population. You can see some of those breakdowns as well on the left side of the chart. Daytime population is interesting too in that we import some workers who come in here and work. We've got some folks who live here who go out of the county for work. So you can see those areas there that see the most in daytime population. It's almost an even split between the unincorporated county at 36% population in the daytime, Peachtree City at 37%, Fayetteville at almost 20%, Tyrone at a little over 5%, and then Brooks and Woolsey make up the lower half of that. What did I say about data? Really, really ugly slide, and I don't expect you to read this. What I do or would like you to see is notice the red. This is, again, population broken down by age in those major categories, cities and unincorporated counties, what the growth rate changes were. You can actually start to detail down and see. The interesting aspect to me, again, this is by age. You see red in the first column, 0 to 9. There's some red in the 10 to 29, red in the 30 to 44. There's no red in the 45 to 64. That's the segment of population we are growing, that 45 to 64 population. See a slight bit of decline in Brooks, 65 and older. But what it essentially means is the population between the ages of 0 and 44 in Fayette County between 2000 and 2010 effectively had no change in growth. It declined slightly, about 5,000 people difference. The population 45 and older added 15,000 people. So essentially, we're not growing that under 44 population in Fayette County. It's stagnant. But 45 and older, we're booming. And I think if you recognize that and you start looking at how that impacts schools, transportation, other aspects, businesses, and what kind of businesses cater to someone who's under 45 versus somebody who's over 45. All these aspects rotate around that change in population. Greg? That's that growth that's coming in that it's that empty nester. A lot of it's empty nester. A lot of it's people who are moving closer to be closer to grandkids. And we've got some folks with a senior service in the back. Kristen's back there. Could attest to that. All right, we'll get off this ugly side. But this just, again, kind of shows some of those numbers a little better for you. You notice on the lower left graph here, changing growth rate. This is looking at the rate of growth. In 2000, we had a growth rate in certain categories. In 2010, we had a growth rate in certain categories. The difference in those two growth rates, for that 30 to 45 population, we had a decline in the growth rate of 27% for 30 to 44, but an increase of 43%. Again, you see where we're growing that 44 and older, we're not growing that lower section. And it kind of goes back to questions like, imagine yourself as a 27-year-old married person with young children. Do you move to Fayette County today, or do you move to one of the counties around us? Can you buy a home in Fayette County today at that price, compared to maybe what you could buy in another county? I mean, these are just some of the questions that come up when you start looking at these numbers in detail. In addition to by age, we are changing racially as a community as well. This is population from the census by race and ethnicity. You look at the growth changes here. Some of the ones that to me are, you look at the first category, the white population, as a percentage of growth rate for the county as a whole, the white population is declining on a growth rate standpoint. The African American population, Asian population, Hispanic population, as a percentage of the county are all growing. The white population's percentage is declining. You look at some of the areas, again, you look at where different changes are taking place racially with increases in populations or decline in populations. Tyrone is the only area that had a positive growth rate, 23% increase in the white population, had a 1,200% growth rate in African American population between 2000 and 2010. Went from, in Tyrone, 132 people who self-identified as African American on the census to 1,722 10 years later. Fayette County as a whole, that bottom section there, had an overall decrease in population in that period, 74,000 up to 72,000 in the white population, but everything else, again, growing in that population. The Atlanta Regional Commission did an interesting report a few months back looking at a lot of this same data from a racial standpoint across the 26 county MSA. And again, I know some of this may be hard to read from here, but looking at changes in population across the MSA in those same age categories we had broken down before. The blue is the white population, the red is the African American population, green is Asian, purple is Hispanic, and then blue is other, or those who've identified as other. Again, you can see from the graph standpoint, what I thought was really interesting, the lower half of this graph, they did a survey of census tracts and looked at the details in these census change points of where by census tract they had an increase of more than 200 persons in a census tract. And they actually plotted that on a map so you can see from an age breakdown where are different demographic points across the metro Atlanta area. And we've pulled out Fayette County on the right there just to show you. This first one is, again, ages 0 to 9, your youngest children. You see a strong concentration along roughly the 400 corridor heading north out of Atlanta of white population. You see a significant amount of African American population south of I-20 area here. You see an Asian population in north in Gwinnett population. And then from Fayette's standpoint, you see the white population in the green dots. And again, these are roughly 200 persons per dot in this category, broken down by different categories. I said that twice, didn't I? Categories by categories. The top is 10 to 29, and you can see kind of how things shift a little bit overall from the population standpoint. 30 to 44 on the lower half. And these are also kind of broken down as well by those demographic qualifiers, the millennials. That's that top area, what we identify as the millennials. The bottom area is the Generation X. That's my group, 30 to 44. Where are they clustering? Where are communities choosing to locate and grow, and how are they growing across the region? And then the last two, 45 to 64, the baby boomer population, and 65 plus. You can see kind of where across the region people are locating. All right, let's get into housing. Housing is an interesting topic because the last couple of years in housing have not been pretty in Fayette County. This looks at Fayette County, Clayton, our neighbor to the east, and Coweta, our neighbor to the west. This is from 2001. These are building permits issued by these counties and the municipalities, the cumulative building permit within the county for those three counties, and as a share of overall MSA, the metro Atlanta area as a whole, how we compare to the MSA. You go back to the bottom of the slide here in 2001, there were 48,000 permits issued across the MSA. We had a share in Fayette. We had 916 permits in Fayette, which equates to just under 2% of the overall MSA permits. Clayton had 2,500, a little over 5% of the share. Coweta had 1,600, a little over 3% of the share. Today, and these are numbers as of through June, the top line, you can see how the percentages have dropped. We went from 1.8% in Fayette in 2001, and have declined as a percentage of the MSA overall over the last 10 years to 1.3% of the MSA as of June, with 23 permits issued for new single-family construction. I'm sorry, I read that backwards. Yes, 59. We had a slight uptick through June, the 6-month period. If that trend were to continue, we're starting to see a curve, and that's a good sign to point out. But yeah, so here's that graphed out. Building permits. Coweta in blue, Clayton in orange, and Fayette in gray. You can kind of see how that track is moving up. This is just from January 11. This is the last year, the last 2 years, I'm sorry. Last 2 years worth of building permit activity. We're trending up a little bit, which is a good sign. We're all trending up. What's interesting to me, though, we've always talked for years about how Fayette County, we had the upper level housing stock in South Metro. The nicest homes, the biggest homes, that they were being built in Fayette. These are the average values per home in these 3 counties over the last 2 years. Fayette is, for the last year, has been under Coweta in average home value. New construction, it's almost $100,000 above. They're building homes $100,000 above Fayette and Coweta. And Clayton, yeah. But Cowetas are about $100,000 more than what they're building in Fayette. So just to show you, again, you look back at some of the population changes, the demographic changes. Are those folks who 15 or 20 years ago would have been buying a home in Fayette are now moving westward and buying a home in Coweta? Both. I mean, they've had that stock. Coweta, of course, is a much larger, physically, geographically, and population. They're larger than Fayette is. They have a much more diverse housing stock, though, as well. They've got starter homes up to larger multi-million-dollar homes that are going into Coweta. Well, and that's kind of gets back to the question before of where's that under 44 population. If you look at the numbers, those, again, who 15 or 20 years ago might have located in Peachtree City or Fayette County are now moving into Sharpsburg and Sonoya and east of Noonan and into Coweta County, that younger population. We pride ourselves on Fayette has the greatest schools. Well, Coweta schools are pretty good too, and they're coming up. It's from a community standpoint, we're not in the same place we were 15 or 20 years ago. That's not necessarily a good or a bad thing, but that's where the numbers are. It's definitely a snapshot, but I think it's a glimpse of what's going on out there right now. Oh yeah, I mean, you go back and look at those numbers there. I mean, you're talking about, again, 23 permits in Clayton up through June, 59 in Fayette, 211 versus 900, 2,500, 1,600. Yeah, I mean, your data set is much smaller. But still, those are the only homes that are being built. That's only new construction. That's not resales. But that poses a question too. If you've got a value of, $250,000, $300,000 on your home that you bought it at, and now you want to go and sell it, well, if you're getting the same square footage here that in a new home that your home is at a lower price that's new, what does that do to your value? Taxes. Everybody loves talking about taxes. From a Fayette County standpoint, looking at revenue sources, the big blue pie is property taxes. This is from the Board of Commissioners' annual reports for tax dollars and where revenues come from, just to give you an understanding here. 55% of the revenue from the county to the county is from property taxes, another 14% from sales taxes. The top left blue pie piece is 20% for charges for services from the county standpoint. Where does your county funding go? This is the county exclusive of education. This does not include school board numbers on the top right here, looking at, if you were to include that, 3/4 of those dollars that come in for property taxes actually goes towards your schools. Little under half goes into public safety from what the county actually funds. Public works at 14%, general government activities at 20%. County revenue sources in the lower left. You've got a stack chart here. The lowest section is property taxes. You can see kind of how our revenues have changed from 2007 to 2011. The blue piece there was the SPLOST that faded out. Some of our other activities have declined a little bit, but you can see what the change in county revenue from over $100 million down to just over $80 million in the last 5 years. And on the right, taxable property, the property that is here that's being taxed, real property in gray, the biggest piece. You can see that peak point. We got to late 2007 from a value standpoint into 2008, hit a peak point here, and then we've been trending down in what that appraised value of property is in Fayette County. Sales tax breakdown as well. This is where revenues come from for sales tax dollars in Fayette County. All right. A couple of other miscellaneous indicators we look at as far as how is our economy locally growing and doing. Top left is your loss collections, your local option sales tax dollars going back to 1998. You can see the spike there in 2006, 2007, and then a decline through the late part of the decade, kind of somewhat flattened out. Top right, hotel motel occupancy. We're filling rooms. That's a good thing. We're back to filling rooms. Conventions, tourism, business training activities. Household employment down in the lower left. We're seeing an increase in employment, and on the lower right, unemployment claims. That's what somebody files before they're getting laid off here. Those numbers are trending down, which is a good sign. You want the one on the left to be going up and the one on the right to be going down. Those are good signs. Employment numbers. We saw this chart in Franklin. They laid out what their employment situation looks like. The furthest we could go back, because there was a change in how the numbers were done, was 2000. So looking at the last decade from an employment sector standpoint, I know you got a lot of colors here and it's a little bit difficult to read, but the dark blue is our total population in thousands. You've got a line here, our largest employment sector. This line here is retail trade. Manufacturing is the green line going down. Our second largest sector here is accommodations and food services, hotels, restaurant, ties in with that retail. We're a service community. You've got lower numbers down here of management of companies and administration and other activities, but that's a small percentage. We have historically and continue to be a community that is a bedroom community. People live here for quality of life, for schools, but a lot of folks commute out of the county for work every day. So that's what you're seeing here. That's a good question. I think if you go back and look, let's pull up that loss slide. You know, if you go back and look at, let's say 2002, put you about right here, you had a good surge between 2002 and 2008. That's that growth rate right there. It's since then that things have fallen off, and that's, I don't know that it's necessarily, we can't tell you, are people shopping somewhere else, or are they just not shopping at all? These numbers don't show that. But it mirrors the economy. Could be internet. I mean, there's a lot of variables in there. We can't tell just by looking at lost information. That's a lot of it. I think so. I think that's a lot of it. Leonard? It does. Public administration is down here at the bottom. There's a chart here. It depends on how they're classified too. There is a government aspect. These numbers are from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So depending on how government actually files those reports, those may or may not be factored into them. No, this doesn't include home-based business. This is only those folks who are filing information that the federal government sees. So if you have a home-based business, if you're not filing those labor information, you're not necessarily factored into that. If you have employees, yes. But if you're just an independent operator, more than likely you're not going to be classified in here. You're too small of a segment, more than likely. And that's one of the challenges, because there are a lot of elements of that in Fayette County. Take out the 4 declining sectors over this 11-year period: construction, manufacturing, administrative, arts and entertainment. And the arts and entertainment is a negligible, but it did nominally decline. So I've recognized that there. Well, it's arts, entertainment, and recreation. So it's only about 400 people that qualify for those. We could pull you the information on what actually counts as that. Those are your growing job sectors again. Wholesale trade is showing one of the highest rates of growth. It's going from just under 2,000, about 1,900, about 2,200 jobs over this 11-year period. Retail trade has grown a little bit as well. And the growing jobs, these are just over the last 3 years, the ones that are actually showing an increase. Again, wholesale trade, retail trade, transportation, warehousing, finance and insurance, real estate, rental and leasing, management of companies and enterprises, administrative support and waste management, and accommodations and food services. Those are the categories that have actually shown increase in people working in those businesses that are classified in those categories. They also showed this slide in Nashville, and I wanted to drop it in here just to give you a reference of how our job changes have been affected over the last decade plus. Fayette's at a negative 1.5% in jobs that are here. We've declined the number of jobs in Fayette County over this 11-year period. Again, comparing to all those other communities. And of course, we're included in the Atlanta is actually, the rest of these are MSA, Metropolitan Statistical Areas. So we're included in the Atlanta number as a whole because we're part of that MSA. But I did want to pull out Fayette specifically during this time period and give you a reference. So wait, where are we again? We're excited to announce that we have commissioned a study with Georgia Tech that has been sponsored by Coweta Fayette EMC. I don't see, is Tony here? Coweta Fayette EMC helped sponsor this for us. Nikki's here from EMC. So Nikki, thank you. We commissioned Georgia Tech to do 2 indexes for us, essentially to build the spreadsheet that utilizes a lot of the data points we just went through. And these 2 indexes are our current economic index, what the state is based on indicators that are active today, and a leading index, indicators that are announced that really something won't happen for another 6 months. So it's kind of giving us a projection of what the next 6 months are going to look like. We're going to start releasing this on a monthly basis. This is like your stock index. I mean, this is telling you what's the economy in Fayette doing and what has it been doing. Georgia Tech took it all the way back to 1997. So we can historically look at these factors and say, where were we? Where are we going? 1997 was our base year. It's the 100-point. You can see how month to month we have changed over this 15-year period. Today, I'm happy to say that we're going up. I mean, you can see where the bottom was. This was the bottom, roughly February, March of 2009. looking at these indicators, again, a lot of the ones we just went through, things like hotel motel stays. I mean, that's a tourism element, but those are dollars coming into our community. Lost collections, building permits, unemployment. I mean, all these different factors that go into here tell us that things are getting better. We still have a ways to go, even to get back to 1997 numbers. But we're showing an increase. The red line is the 12-month moving average, so it kind of softens some of those curves out a little bit. We'll be releasing this through our newsletter on a monthly basis now. We just got this starting December. It's exciting to be able to say, when somebody asks, what's the economy doing in Fayette County? Well, this is what it's doing. 1 month change of 1.1%, 3 month change of 1.8%, a 12-month change of 4.9%. A 5% growth rate over the last 12 months. I think that's pretty good. Yes, sir. The economy. I mean, it's just our economy was so tied into a lot of what Metro Atlanta was tied in. Residential construction, services. When you look at one category like commercial, like construction, you think, okay, well, there's construction. Yeah, the people involved in housing got hit. But then so do the real estate agents, and so do the finance people. And it just keeps building and building and building and building, going further out, so that everybody at some level was touched by that. For us, it ties back to construction. We had a huge piece of the pie that was construction that has now become a much smaller piece of the pie. Yeah, Delta had their bankruptcy issue. That's another good point. We're tied back into that now. You see layoffs; those factor into this. If people don't have the expendable income, they're not buying stuff. They're not getting the loss collections. All that factors in. Well, what are those pressure points? What are those aspects, and can we address those? That's a great point. The current economic index, and then the second one is the leading economic index. These are items that, like building permits. Well, building permit is pulled today, but it's going to be spread out over the next few months while that house is being built. So things like that go into here. Again, we're showing a growth, 3.5% over 12 months. In fact, it's starting to, dare I say it, steepen a little bit, which is a nice sign to say over the next few months we would see better economic numbers from here. The downside is if you see it dip down, you know that bad things are about to hit. And that's one of the aspects why we'll be able to release this. People can take advantage of this. Hopefully be able to look into some of these numbers. We'll have a huge report that actually goes with this on a monthly basis so you can see what the background is here. We're excited to be able to do this and have this, and this will again be ongoing on a monthly basis that we'll be tracking and hopefully working with our local media, being able to get that out to the population as well. So very excited about this. So where do we go from here? And I'm going to quickly run through what we do at the Development Authority because we're getting close to our time break here. The Development Authority, whom I work for, we've got a board of directors. We're a quasi-governmental entity, which means that we receive funding from local government entities, but we operate almost like a business structure. We're almost like a nonprofit. We handle two main functions, retention and expansion, and recruitment, bringing in new businesses. Recruiting new office and industry is our focus. We don't deal a lot on the retail side because that tends to be more of a service for what's going on here. We look at it as there's a base level of economic impact and there's a secondary level of economic impact. The retail activity is here because they're serving a population that is here. Our focus needs to be on making sure that we have a significant population here at the base level, and those major sectors that we have focus on are industrial activities and office activities. So that's what we focus our time and effort and energy on. Recruiting in new activities. Companies like Sani, we brought in 2007, doing manufacturing, putting in an office headquarters here. We hopefully are going to be very excited to announce in the next 2 months a new project that is going to be moving to Fayette County that will be bringing in about 50 new jobs as part of their location to Fayette County. We've also got a couple other projects we're working on that are going to be very, very significant if we can land those here in the next 4 to 6 months as well. Hopefully we'll have some announcements on that. We also focus on existing business, helping them grow and expand in Fayette County. That's really the base. If you had to say, if you could only choose one, which would you choose? Taking care of our existing businesses and industries is the primary goal of what we need to be doing as a community, because those businesses that are here already, we don't have to wine and dine them. We don't have to convince them we're a great community. They're here already. Sometimes I need a little assistance to ensure that they're doing and can grow the way they want to and need to. But we're focused on those two aspects and ensuring that we're growing our businesses and we're bringing in new activity as well. We do some marketing for our website, and I would invite you as well to go to our website, which is fayettegA.org. On the site in the lower left, we have a subscribe button for our newsletter. Go ahead and put your email address on there, subscribe for it. The newsletter will come out. It varies how often it comes out based on what kind of information we're releasing, but it'll actually start coming out more regularly now with some of this new economic data we're going to be putting out on a monthly basis as well. We do some limited advertisement. Most of our stuff is focused on business-to-business activity, going to meet prospects, going to meet businesses, and convince them to come check Fayette County out. Let us show you why we think we're a great location. Also work with identifying sites, buildings for businesses, where they can locate. We do research, as you've already seen today, going into some of the detailed data that we have so we can talk about things like workforce and availability of community activities. We talk about what a great location we are. I mean, it's, as dire as things have been in the past and as good as things are moving forward, we know that on a bad day, we're 30 minutes from the airport. There's a huge growth opportunity for us, and we're seeing that with international projects that are continuing to look at Georgia. We can offer an incredible quality of life for somebody and still get, the old joke, it takes you longer to find a parking space at the airport than it does for you to get to the airport from Fayette County. Culture and recreation. I mean, these are things, again, if you were from out of town, I would talk to you about how Zach Brown has located here, has moved his business and operations here, has got himself an amphitheater, thank you, Fayetteville, and is performing now in our community and is becoming more and more a part of our community every day. The activities we have with recreation, I mean, just going on and on about what makes us a great place. I mentioned a second ago about international activities. We see a focus from an international standpoint. These are the companies that are here today on the top left, the national basis that we have. Companies that have a presence, that are based overseas but have a presence here, a significant presence here, from a wide variety of companies, over 40 companies from 12 different countries. We see that as a continued opportunity for growth pipeline for us. We see aviation as a growth area as well. The airport has 60 acres designated at Falcon Field for aviation-related businesses and industries. We're promoting that area as an opportunity for new businesses and industries. We're protecting Fayette County. Office and headquarter activity as well is a growth area for us. Again, quality of life. We think we make a great area, a great location for those kind of back office and office activities. We've got some challenges, though. I mean, one of our challenges is we are declining the numbers of product we have for these companies. These companies, an office, in fact, I had a conversation yesterday, somebody who wants to come in and buy 75,000 square feet of office in Fayette County. Folks, it doesn't exist. I mean, there is not 75,000 square feet of office sitting out there today in Fayette County on the ground. But companies like that don't want to say, I don't have 12 to 18 months to build a building. I need a building now. You show me a building now, we'll get in it. Well, that's one of our challenges here. We don't have those buildings on the ground sitting open for that size project. And I get calls monthly for companies looking for 50 to 75,000 square feet of office. We make a great headquarters location, but only if you got the product. And that's one of our challenges is, where's the product? Are our banks lending speculatively for office? I mean, it's not happening. But there's a market out there. I can anecdotally tell you there's a market out there. There's the airport site. I mentioned 60 acres there at the south side of the runway, prime for growth. We've got some other buildings that we're marketing, the spec building in Peachtree City. One of the The challenges we faced is one of our companies, Gardner Denver, has announced they're going to be closing their facility here roughly in February. We're already marketing their building. They're still active in that building producing product through February. We've already taken 3 or 4 companies into that facility to see it, had some positive reviews. Our goal is to get somebody in there on a turnkey effect where Gardner Denver moves out, the next company moves in, maybe even hire some of Gardner Denver's employees so we don't see too huge of a layoff issue there. A great opportunity for somebody. That's my spiel. Thank you very much for your time and attention this morning and your interest in Fayette County. We hope you choose to locate your business here. We would be happy to help you in any way we can to ensure that you have a successful economic experience in Fayette County.